I'm really honored to be here to talk to you today. We have, clicker here, been working for the last year and a half in our office with a group of students. And this project that's come out of that is called Richmond Bayway. And it's looking at the Richmond shoreline in the year 2100. And you're looking at one of the products of that studio. This is a map over time of how the shoreline has grown and changed. And what's interesting about it is you don't really read the individual layers, you read the trends, you read the growth and how things have shifted. So time is really the question here. The city does an amazing job dealing with things that are imminent and are pressing, and they need to. So the 1-year timeline, the 5-year timeline, the 10-year timeline is always going to have to be the priority. So where would you ever find the resources or the time or the inclination to talk about 2100? Why would you do that? And that's what we want to talk about right here. Introduction to the geography of Richmond. It is really well served by infrastructure. So there's freight rail, Amtrak coming through the city, major station for Amtrak in the center. BNSF serves the Chevron refinery and all the port. Major highways, I-80 north-south, 580 east-west connecting to Marin County. The much anticipated global campus of UC is at the far south there, and you were there in that red dot. So here's Richmond today. And here's Richmond in 2100. So that's a problem. This is using basically middle of the road predictions about what's going to happen with global warming and rising sea levels. Sea level rise initiatives are all around us, and they're happening internationally. And they can really be divided into two sectors, really. There's the defense, which is about levees and weirs, protecting the resources, keeping the water out, storm surge wetlands to protect us from wave action. And on the other hand, there's offense. Offense is about, can we accept what's going to happen? In fact, are there actually opportunities within the rising sea level to recover things that we might have lost? That's more the realm of what we're talking about here. But that's not the only issue. The Hayward Fault running just to the east, we're going to have a major event in probably the next 20 years. It's coming, there's no question. In this gray area you see in the center is a whole zone of very soft soil, a lot of artificial fill placed on top of marshes and bay mud. That's going to be subject to really intense liquefaction. It's scary. So Anchorage, Alaska, here's what happened in 1964. That's an extreme situation, but it's an unstable base for the city to build on as it currently sits. So this is the total problem. And so what are you going to do about that? I mean, you can't build a dike around all that. It's not practical. What we need is a reinvented topography, something that is more resilient, able to redefine our shoreline, and something that can be extended throughout the state, worldwide even. This is not a problem, not just specific to Richmond, but it's all around the bay. It's all around the Pacific Rim. Everywhere you've got flat land by the bay, we've built a lot of stuff that's smokestack industry, parking lots, everything that kind of benefit from this easy fill, which has been placed on top of bay mud, which is full of water. But smokestack industry is really not where we're headed. It's really going to be cleaner, denser in footprint, denser in jobs, and much along the lines of what we just saw. There's the Chevron refinery. Maybe Toyota's got some ideas about how some of that infrastructure could be adapted by the year 2100 to produce fuel cells. The community here is, as you can see, separated from the water by industry, so that's good. They're on safer ground. And they've been here a long time. They emerged out of, in a lot of ways, the community here emerged out of the shipyards at Kaiser in 1941. And this was a great moment in the city's history. Men, women, people of every color were all working together, treated equally, and they produced at an astonishing rate. And they transformed the war. And this is kind of the greatest moment in Richmond's history. This is a great piece of identity for us and a sense of belonging for the community. So what we have to do is we have to do things that are fundamentally polar opposites. We need to plan for incrementally for sea level rise, which goes in inches. We need to plan for instantaneous events in the future, and then continue to happen periodically. We need to plan for the future in terms of what 2100, what would be the framework? What would be the principles that would guide us in our decisions moving forward? But we need to start bottom up. We need to start with the kinds of projects we saw yesterday with Doria Robinson and Tootie Mar at Pogo Park, North Richmond Farm. The work that's going forward has got to emerge out of the community itself. Can't have a designer define all that for you. We need to partner together. Here's the shoreline as it currently sits. 32 miles actually, not 35, oh my God. But it's a shoreline, although it's a lot, numerically, it's only partially accessible. There are only a few places you can actually get there. And the shoreline resources, the eelgrass beds and the marshes have been radically reduced. A lot of what you see here is called muted or dormant ecological systems, and they don't connect. They're fragments. Is there a way that we could rejoin these things hydrologically? Is there a way that it could function as one integrated, holistic ecosystem that is highly diverse and healthy again? So we would say that maybe there's a framework that could be developed out of the shoreline itself. Maybe the shoreline is a way that you can move all up and down the edge of the bay, connect all the neighborhoods that front on it, give them the benefit and entry into a new series of opportunities within the bay itself. To the north, possibly one more oriented to natural systems. To the south, one more oriented to enterprise. So the way to do that then would be to draw the line, the new coastline, back at the limit of tidal flooding at around 2100, back at the limit of the less intense shaking from ground movement. And everything outboard of this new stabilized shoreline is part of the bay. That's the Bayway. And to the north, we can develop a series of island landforms stabilized. To the south, a series of peninsulas, which are more suitable for roads and utilities connections. And what we're essentially doing is, if you imagine a flat piece of land that's about to flood, we need to kind of scoop out here and put it there. That's the easiest way to understand it. And we're going to have to be a lot of material to do that with. It's essentially the process of landfill, but done for a better purpose. There's constant, production of material from new construction, offhaul from sites, debris from, God forbid, future seismic events that can create a stable core and can really concentrate and sequester contaminants that are within that material. Then from the dredging of the shipping channel, the creation of new tidal estuaries, we can place material on top that will make that much more rich and diverse and fertile and create even much more shoreline than we have now. How do we stabilize this? There's a lot of techniques, and they range from fairly simple over broad areas to very invasive and intense, more expensive. But they have the two things they're trying to do. One is they're trying to create more rigidity within the base. And even more important, they're trying to get water out. Water is what contributes to liquefaction because what's under there is behaving as a liquid because of the water that's in the medium. As we draw the water out, compact it further, it then behaves like solid ground. And it's been proven in various places in Japan. So here's an example. The Richmond Parkway is an important connector within the city. It's going to be underwater. And what do we do about that? We have the opportunity to introduce a new stabilized fill, which is not a dike. This is an extension of the upland so that the whole city can still drain and create a steeper and a shoreline which is more designed for human use. This is what that could look like. Down along the bottom, you see that the way it's currently, it's very underutilized, vast tracts of asphalt and seemingly abandoned land. I'm sure there's some ideas there of what that's supposed to do. I'd rather do this. Here, this is the same route of Richmond Parkway, but it is now a complete street. It carries electric vehicles, hydrogen cell vehicles, I'm sure, BRT, but it's a linear park for people. It's not just for vehicles. It's a way to move all along the shoreline and then be introduced to a kind of vast new world that is created with Bay Water, in partnership with Bay Water. In the distance, you see Mount San Pablo, which is sitting on top of current landfill. So that's the Bayway. Everything that is inside of those green lines, in the water, is the new world that we can embrace. To the north, we'd love to see a whole park which stretches from Point San Pablo all the way to Point Pinole. To the south, more intense, more dense enterprise, building on all the infrastructure that's there, and a hub at the center that really defines the connections and allows these things to move. A couple of key things that could penetrate back there's an urban core really that is possible starting right here at this building, moving back to McDonald Street where we have Amtrak line and BART. Ferry Terminal's coming here. Wouldn't it be great to loop that and allow a new core to develop over the next 50, 100 years as more of a concentration of real future downtown. To the north, we have the creeks. We have Wildcat Creek, San Pablo Creek, which are currently pretty suppressed. There's an opportunity to develop that, to open riparian corridors all the way to the hills, out to the water. So this is an area in between those two creeks. Current plan is to raise the dikes there to protect the zone in between. It's always been subject to flooding. Well, what if we didn't do that? What if we let it flood? What if we instead created a series of landforms with that material for everything that people want to do, farming, recreation, other kinds of facilities, maybe even housing? It's a combination of programs and natural systems that could evolve out of this sort of approach. Here's what that could look like. And one of the things that's important about this is that it's ecological, natural system right next to recreation. We don't need to separate them. We ought to keep them close because they give each other meaning that way. That's the way that each establishes their own value. Here's an aerial view of that same thing. So I think the most significant thing here beyond the vision is the fact that this is the promise of rising tides. There's an opportunity to recover what was lost. When the Europeans first came here, it was teeming with life, flocks of birds that blacked out the whole sky. That's gone, but we can actually recover that if we work with the water and with the topography instead of against it. As we do that, we're going to need to clean the soil. It's really full of God knows what. It's going to be a major Superfund project. Chevron refinery, they might be producing fuel cells, who knows? It's probably going to, we know we're not going to be using gasoline at that point. So we don't need this vast footprint. That area could be shrunk down. In this version, it could become a production facility for biofuels, research, remediation management. Down below, you see the idea of a phytoremediation forest. So the park can actually proceed while the cleaning is happening. These poplar trees you're looking at actually pull pollutants out of the soil, and they sequester and degrade them within their own their canopy. This is kind of a really weird pivot point in the city, where 580 crosses all the freight lines. And like, I don't know, what is all that stuff? I'm sure we probably need it, or we did, but is it still necessary? I don't know. There's a lot of things that are really held apart. Atchison Village, Point Richmond, Port, everything by the shoreline. Could they be brought together? So this is an idea. There's a little bit like kind of a 3D rotary, or like the bottom of a slinky or something you kind of pulled up, where everything could hopefully be connected. For example, the Ohio Street Greenway that has to stop at a certain point can continue right over the rail, curl around, and bring you into this new hub, which has the opportunity to connect everything much better. Rail is still important, but we think that the footprint could really be concentrated and continue to supply important resource for manufacturing, research and development, just not the way it is right now in the 20th century. And some of that rail yard could be converted to new housing and farming. This is a vision down below of a lifestyle that we think could be great here in Richmond, drawing on the culture that's here with us. New housing, multi-story, next to a larger park, and we're going to need to raise stormwater up to the surface level for the reason that all the culverts and the pipes are too low. They're going to be flooded. So the city will need to learn to live with water up on the surface as really as a kind of a lifestyle, as a way of using the rainfall that we're receiving, taking advantage of every resource that we got. Let me just go ahead to this one here. We're here in the far left, Greenway Pavilion. We're okay, actually, because it's higher than the future sea levels. It could be stabilized, but back where the cars are parked is also underwater. So we're going to need to fill that zone, and we're going to need to stabilize that all the way back to 580, which is actually also going to be underwater. So can I go back? There we go. So here's the simple idea of a land bridge, which can actually move across 580 and allow this urban core to grow unhindered from the city center out to the water. So here's the vision of Ford Point. This is the idea that the city is actually growing toward the bay and has a great moment, a great new waterfront that's public. We have a great start right here, as you can see. We could actually make this a destination of a larger system that's really connected by transit. We could position a new ferry terminal, quite grand, symbolic perhaps, that creates an arch and actually connects water to land all the way up Marina Way back to the city center where we have Amtrak and BART. Maybe you could live here without a car. Maybe there could be a hotel in that arch so you can stay here and you don't have to come back and forth to Berkeley the next time you come to this meeting. So this is the idea of really an urban threshold that moves people from land to water. It draws on the traditions and the toughness and the resilience of the city. At the same time, it's looking forward to the new kind of importance and civic function and production that we would see coming. So that's really the end of what I was going to talk about. It must have been record time, I guess. But I think the last point I want to make that's important is that this looks like a plan, but it's not. This is not a prescription. This is intended to be a provocation. When this discussion needs to get going, we need stuff to look at, things to shoot at. What could it be like? Oh, that's a terrible idea. We need material that will allow that discussion to really take place, and we're just getting started. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Fantastic.